What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again with another video for you guys. And seeing as that David Raya is very close to completing personal terms, at least with Tottenham, and obviously we're going to have a long, protracted negotiations with Brentford for David Raya, the goalkeeper. I'm here with Brian Daigle to look at why are Tottenham so interested in David Raya. Why is he our #1 goalkeeping target? Obviously, we've spoken about him a lot on this channel about how much we rate him and how much we want him, but we're going to look into maybe the numbers, and we're going to have a general discussion about why Tottenham's #1 target is David Raya and see if we can maybe come to some conclusions. But Brian, lovely to have you in the studio with us today. First of all, initial thoughts on David Raya. Is he one who you have earmarked as someone who you want to come to Spurs?
Yeah, first of all, it's always a pleasure to be here in the studio and with you, Sim. It's been a little while. During the season, I wanted Dean Henderson. I was a big fan of Dean Henderson. But this season, the emergence of David Raya has far surpassed my want for Henderson. I think this is an incredible bit of business. Whatever fee we pay right now, even if it's the 40 million, this is a big signing and a big statement into where we may be going. I think this is a deal we just have to get done.
Yeah, well, he's 27 years of age. He's 6'4" goalkeeper as well. Spanish international. Actually, just got called up to the Spain squad as well. He's had a fantastic couple years at Brentford since they got promoted to the Premier League. But I think most notably this season, he's really shone and made a big difference to how Brentford defend. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the stats, some of the FB Ref stats, how he compares to other keepers, and we'll do a comparison between him and some of the best keepers currently in the Premier League to see how he stacks up. So first of all, we're looking at his scout report on FB Ref. I get him against keepers in the top 5 European leagues, how he stacks up. So if you look at touches per 90, first of all, what's the remit of what we want in a modern day goalkeeper? Is someone who's very good with his feet, someone who can play long passes, get involved in the play, but also still very good at his goalkeeping duties, not someone who sacrifices one for the other. He's good at coming for crosses, but most notably a difference between him and Lloris will be how different he will be in terms of touches and passes and with the ball at his feet, and that's something we haven't had since Lloris has been in our goal.
Yeah, I mean, what you got to remember, Sim, is when we first signed Hugo Lloris, the evolution of the goalkeeper back then was a sweeper keeper. That's what every kind of team wanted. The goalkeeper had to be a sweeper keeper. When we got Hugo Lloris, he was the best of the best. He really was. But with the evolution of football and the modern day way football is played, it's now far from it, isn't it? It's now the play out from the back. And I've watched many a game with you, and you've seen what I'm like. When the ball is at Hugo's feet, I have minor heart attacks. He's been a fantastic keeper, a fantastic servant. But the way football is played now is exactly what you just said with the key statistics, and unfortunately Raya is much better than Lloris is in these departments.
We'll look at his kicking first, and in terms of touches per 90, he's 45 touches per 90, which is one of the highest in Europe's top 5 leagues. When you look at passes completed, these are passes completed longer than 40 yards per 90. That's just under 10, which is one of the best in Europe's top 5 leagues. Passes attempted as well, 23, which again is quite high up. Pass length, he actually does a lot of long passes, doesn't do too many short passes, which is quite interesting because he very often is looking to find Ivan Toney in the final third. But his average pass length is actually 40 yards, which means he's doing a lot of long passes, and that's quite one of the highest in Europe's top 5 leagues. He launches a lot of his goal kicks quite long, which is going to be quite interesting to see how he adapts to maybe a shorter version of that under Postecoglou. So in terms of passes attempted as well, just under 36 passes attempted per 90, again in the 93rd percentile in Europe's top 5 leagues. So what we can gather from that, I guess, is he attempts a lot of passes. He does generally pass quite long, but his long passing is exceptional, one of the best in top 5 leagues. And we'll get into maybe some of these other passing stats later. We'll do comparison to other keepers because there'll be more metrics, but that is, from what we're seeing here in terms of amount of touches, we're clearly very confident. He gets a lot of touches per 90, completes a lot of his passes, but I guess on the flip side, he generally does a lot more longer passing than he does shorter passing. So I guess there's a caveat to that, but definitely in terms of how he is with his feet, that's what we're looking for.
Most certainly, and you know what? It also adds even with the long passing, it's an added bonus that we have because, as we know, Eric Dyer is meant to be our most advanced passer and best passer, and we know that his passing has not been on point this season at all. It's another option. Like you said, he may be launching out for Tony, but this is another string to the bow. I think having someone with those kind of statistics in Europe's top 5 leagues to be in the 90th percentile, it's definitely another string to the bow, isn't it? That offers Ange another option should we need to go direct.
And in terms of his sweeper keeper as well, how good he is with coming out of his area, defensive actions outside the penalty area per 90. He's in the 80th percentile, so in Europe's top 5 leagues, so he's still quite high up. Average distance he engages the opponent is about 16 yards, which is above average. It's not like one of the top, but so he doesn't come flying out compared to maybe other keepers, but it's still above average. He still engages attackers quite far out as well, so that's pretty good in terms of sweeper keeping. When it comes to crosses, he's very good at coming for crosses, clearly. Crosses faced, he's faced one of the most in Europe in terms of crosses faced, nearly 16 per game. Crosses stopped, it's just over 1, which doesn't sound like a lot, but actually that's one of the highest percentages in the league. He stops around 9% of the crosses that comes his way, which is in the 93rd percentile. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but he's actually one of the best keepers on coming for crosses, it seems, in Europe. I
again agree with you, and another thing we've got to look at is over the last few years, one of the things Hugo has been dwindling on is being commanding and coming out for crosses and claiming the ball cleanly. He has just slowly but surely, especially for Spurs, maybe that's because the defence in front of him hasn't been up to scratch, but he has started to go downhill with that. And it looks like, again, he looks like a very commanding goalkeeper who speaks to his defence. And these stats back it up, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, he's always one in the eye test. He seems to be a very strong keeper for crosses, but these stats definitely back it up. And then obviously the last one we'll look at from his stats is how good is he at actual goalkeeping?
Let's do that. Let's do that. The most vital.
How good is he at just keeping the ball out of the back of the net as opposed to just passes and touches and all these things? Well, if you look at the stats here, saves, he's made the most saves. He's in the 99th percentile in saves overall in Europe. Save percentage, he's just under 78%, which is the 92nd percentile. So he makes a lot of saves, and he has an amazing save percentage, which is an incredible combo. Usually, you think if you're making a lot of saves, then the percentage that the shots that you're saving will go down because you're making a lot of saves. But actually, he's got one of the highest save percentage in Europe, which means he's a very good shot stopper. One caveat to that would be, if you look at the metric, which is post-shot expected goals. So it's quite a complicated metric, but basically it displays how likely you are to save shots that you're faced. So if the statistic here is his post-shot XG for shot on target, which means how hard are the shots that he's facing, and actually he per shot it's about 0.24, which means that basically means the shots he's facing are low quality shots, so they're less likely to go in, the shots he's facing. So basically it means Brentford are quite good at defending.
Exactly, that's what I was about to ask.
Right. So it means the shots he's facing, they're not as likely to go in. But in terms of post-shot XG minus goals against, which means how many shots is he saving minus the goals he's conceded, how many shots he's expected to save, it's 0.13 per goal, essentially, per 90. So that's in the 80th percentile, which means overall, I think he's saved about 5 goals in the whole season, which he's expected to let in. So he's in the 80th percentile. So basically, long story short, he's good at shot stopper as well. He saves a lot of shots that he's supposed to. So what all these stats are basically saying is he's essentially good at coming for crosses. He's likes the ball at his feet. He's good at passing. And when it comes to shot stopping, he's a very able shot stopper who saves a lot of shots, albeit a lot of them for Brentford have been low XG shots. Maybe at Tottenham it's going to go up. Maybe it's going to be harder to face. But he's saved Brentford a lot more than he's conceded compared to Lloris, I believe. Who's, I think he's conceded 4 more goals than he should have. Raya has saved 5 more goals than he should have. So when you look at that, he seems like the full package.
Yeah, I mean, you've just described all the attributes and characteristics you'd want from a goalkeeper, haven't you? And you've just got to look. I mean, we can talk about it fairly recently. The double save he made from Richarlison at the end. I mean, the agility to make these double saves as well is something you've got to look at with a goalkeeper as well, with their reflexes and response times to getting up to make the next save. He, for me, and the stats go to show with what you've just shown us, that he has to be the number one pick for us. He's got the Premier League experience, homegrown as well, which I think is vital in all this, especially with our homegrown quota being an issue over recent years. I can't see a negative thing to say about him.
Now, if we compare him to maybe some of the top keepers in Europe, so we've got a comparison here between him, Alisson, Ramsdale, Ederson, De Gea, and Lloris. So not Europe, in the Premier League.
Yep.
Some of the top keepers in the Premier League. Let's see how he stacks up. So I've highlighted Raya here in yellow. So whenever you might lose his name, but whenever you see Raya, you'll ever see an orange mark. So if you look at his how many goals he saved during the season. You got Alisson way out there with 10, but Raya is second to him with 5. And you look at Lloris here, minus 4.1. So he's conceding a lot more, unfortunately, than he should be. And that maybe shows the difference. You could be maybe saving 9 goals.
Exactly, it's a swing, isn't it?
So I'm like, well, that's a 9-goal swing, essentially. Stopping Lloris for Raya when it comes to shots on target. When you look at passing-wise, completed passes over per 90 minutes, 9.3, and he's literally triple anyone near him. 9.3 there for completed passes over 40 yards per 90 minutes. But his completion rate isn't as impressive. It's 40%, which is third on the list. Alisson and Ederson, obviously the two biggest ones, they're going to be a bit better. When it comes to passes in general attempted, he's top, 36 attempted. Throws attempted, he's fourth to Lloris and Ramsdale and Alisson. The average length, though, this is the difference. Which is one thing is quite impressive, but also a caveat because I'm assuming his passing might be a bit shorter under Postecoglou than at Brentford. But his average length is 40 yards, which is a lot higher than any other goalkeeper on this list. But his completed passes as well is also a lot higher. So he makes a lot more long passes, but he's completing them as well, which is quite impressive, which shows off his passing ability.
That's the thing. I think it's better to have someone that's passing long and make him adapt to play with hands maybe shorter, rather than the other way around of him being able to complete short passes very, very well, but long passes not at all. So I think it looks as a negative right now that obviously his balls are a lot longer, and like you said, will be direct for Tony or whoever it may be. But I think if his passing accuracy is that good from that long, surely we're tweaking his game and playing it in the Postecoglou way could be a benefit to playing shorter. Plus, it does give us the option that should we need to go direct, we've got a keeper that's more than able of doing it.
Yeah, you can see here as well when he goes to goal kicks, average length of goal kicks is much longer. Apart from Ramsdale, he's pretty much longer than any other keeper here at over 50 yards per goal kick. So basically what I was trying to say, he tends to launch his goal kicks to the halfway line rather than play it short. And under Postecoglou, it's going to be a bit different. Crossing wise, how is he at crossing? He does face a lot more crosses than most other teams at 15.7 crosses per game, which is higher than most other teams. De Gea and Lloris are a bit close behind with 13, but the other 3 are either 10 or just under 10. So it's a big difference. But crosses stopped is 1.37, which is much higher than all the other keepers. No keeper has more than one before, has more than 0.9 actually, so he's much higher at 1.37. And percentage-wise, his percentage of crosses stopped is much better than the other keepers as well. 8.7%. The next highest is 6.6, which is Ederson. So he's really good at coming from crosses. Actually, who's this? 2.9. That would be David De Gea. Not very good at coming from crosses, David De Gea. He's the worst, it seems. And being a sweeper, defensive actions outside the box, he's second to Alisson. He's actually nearly 1 behind Alisson. So Alisson's truly elite. Raya's second. For the distance as well, he's third to Alisson and I believe Ederson and Ramsdale.
Ramsdale, okay.
Ramsdale second, so he's just behind. But he's is a very small difference between him and Ramsdale, but Alisson's way out in front. So Alisson's much better at sweeping, essentially.
Yep, which we've seen.
But crossing-wise, Raya's the best out of all these. If we look at other, we go into maybe other metrics for maybe passes. Here we can see this is just completed passes overall per 90. Raya would be third compared to Alisson. So Alisson, Edison first and second, Ray is third. But it's impressive he does more than Ramsdale, De Gea, Lloris.
Yep.
Much more than them. Pass completion rate, though, he's the lowest, 64%. Compared to, I think that's because he does a lot more longer passing.
Exactly.
Essentially, that's why his pass completion rate is going to be a bit lower. Progressive distance, though, obviously is longer passing, so it's going to be higher. If you look at his short passes, he actually completes the least short passes out of all these keepers, only 3.45, much shorter actually than a lot of them. Alisson nearly 5 more per game. Completion rate for short passes is still okay, 97%.
Yep,
that's fine. And Alisson, I'm sorry, De Gea looks like it's got 100% completion rate, which is pretty incredible. When it comes to medium length passes, he's third with a solid completion rate, 98%, still the lowest though. Long passes, though, here you go, 12,
right, yep.
Which is much higher than everyone else.
But it does show he's got a bit of variation, doesn't it? He can work on the stats that he needs to and improving that, but he can short, long, medium range passes. He has got it in his locker.
But he attempts a lot as well. He attempts the most by far, nearly 12 nearer than the next person, and his completion rate still okay, 40, just under 45%, which but very impressive, 63% nearly is Edison, and Alisson also over 58%. So their completion rates actually from long passing are a bit better. Lloris actually has a bit higher completion rate, which is
bloody
interesting, but he attempts a lot less. So that's interesting. When it comes to passes into the final third, 1.97 for Raya compared to the rest, so he passes a lot more forward. Key passes per game as well.
Wow.
A bit higher. He's the best in the league, so he'll have a bit higher key passes per game, and progressive passes per game, much higher than anyone else at 0.34. Ramsdale and Alisson coming second and third. So yeah, that's pretty much all the stats that we're looking at him compared to the other keepers. Again, he seems to stack up very favourably when it comes to saves, passes, and especially crosses. That's definitely his biggest thing. But I guess one thing to caveat is his short range passing. He's going to have to adapt his game a bit, not hitting it as long. But he clearly has that long pass in his game, and so that could be a very useful tool for us to use. And when it comes to his goalkeeping, he stacks up with, in the stats anyway, with some of the very best. With it again, with a caveat with Edison, Alisson, and maybe and some of the other keepers. Maybe when they do have shots on target, they're going to be better attempts because they're not as compact as Brentford are. But Raya does make more saves than those three, so maybe it balances itself out.
Yeah, I think also what you've got to look at as well with this is that this is a guy, we're comparing him to keepers that were in teams that were, their expectations were getting to the Champions League. All of the ones we were comparing with. Whereas Brentford would have been, let's get 40 points and then let's build from there, with no disrespect to them. They've had a wonderful season. They got a wonderful manager. And I think comparing those stats to a team like Brentford could just endorse what he could do at a team like Tottenham Hotspur, where obviously the expectations are a lot higher. And if at all possible, these stats we've just shown has just strengthened my thoughts and want that we just get this deal done as soon as possible, because he just looks like the outstanding candidate, doesn't he?
He does, and obviously add into the fact of all those things that we mentioned, that he's homegrown, Premier League experience as well, good age at 27, he's not too old but also not too young. He's coming in having had that Premier League experience at Brentford, so doesn't seem too much downside to this deal at the moment.
Add into it as well, speaks perfect English, already is in London, so it's not like a huge move for family or anything like that. It's a keeper that is available, and Brentford have already got their replacement, haven't they? They've already brought him in, so they're expecting him to depart. So it's now just getting this deal done, and we need to get it done before other people do act.
I mean, looking at these stats, 40 million doesn't seem to be completely unreasonable. I have seen on Twitter a lot of people saying 40 million is too much and we shouldn't go that high. And look, I do think that if there aren't many other teams in for him, we can probably haggle them lower than 40 just because he has got 1 year left on his deal and they've signed a replacement anyway, so they are prepared to sell him, clearly. But if the worst comes to worst and they do dig their heels in up until late in the window, and they're still kind of demanding 40, I think we shouldn't lose him for the sake of a few million, 10 million, because this keeper ticks every box that we want.
That's exactly the thing, Simeon. You look at it, and I said to you before, when you look at it, is he worth 40 million? Well, that's debatable when you look at it, but is he worth 40 million to Tottenham Hotspur right now with the homegrown, the fact that everyone knows we need a keeper, the fact that he's got the Premier League experience and everything we've shown, for the sake of people saying 25, 30 mil, for the sake of 10 million, to get your number one in, ready and sorted before pre-season, is just huge. Listen, I don't want us to... If we pay 40 million, we pay 40 million. But if we start doing this and then a Manchester United come in and go, wallop, there you go, and we lose him for the sake of haggling over 5, 10 million, well, what's the point? Then we have to start from scratch again, and you won't find a keeper with the kind of stats and ability that we've just discussed.
All right, well, let us know in the comment section below, what do you think about the prospective David Raya signing? Are you one to think that he's our number one target? Are you excited? Do you think 40 million is too much? Let us know in the comment section below your thoughts. But like, subscribe and comment. And as always,
come on, you Spurs.